Alright, so hi everyone and welcome back to episode 2 of the Familiarity. I'm Melissa and I'm here to bring you the first discussion of Act 1 of The Familiar, and that is going to include the new this season section. So before I start off, I just wanted to apologize. I know it's been a long time since I've posted a video, or at least it seems like it has, and the truth is, there's just kind of been a lot of stuff in my life, just kind of in general, and it's not always at the forefront of my mind at the moment to make a YouTube video, and I'm still kind of trying to get the hang of, doing this whole YouTube thing, and I'm hoping that I'll get better at it as time goes on. And I'm very sorry for leaving you hanging. I'm not giving up on any of this. I do still plan on making YouTube videos for quite a while, and I do still intend on keeping up with the Familiarity. So these discussions will continue, and I'm sorry if there's any time that they are late or if there's long pauses in between them, but I'm working on it. I'm working on fitting this into my life and into my schedule as much as possible, and hoping I can make it more of a priority, make it more of something that I really, try to get done a little bit every day, or at least every other day or something. So, yeah. So, for this episode of The Familiarity, I'm going to be trying something a little bit different. You see I've got an above view going on here. And what I am hoping to accomplish with this is to be able to give you a much clearer view of what this story looks like, because a lot of this story lies in the visual elements that Mark Z. Danielewski puts in his work. So I'm hoping to play to that a bit more. Obviously, my goal is not to make it so that you're just reading the entire book along with me. That's not what I want in doing it this way. I'm not going to be showing all of the pages in each section. This is just meant to be a preview and a way for me to really show you guys, the audience, what the books look like and all of the good stuff that's inside of them, as well as making sure that you actually have a good view of them, because I know in my past videos when I was showing off the books, I didn't exactly give you guys the best visual of them. So now I'm giving you one that's more up close, one a bit more personal, one where you can actually make out all of the parts. I'd also like to point out that from this point forward, if you don't want to be spoiled for any of the actual story aspects that are presented in the books, you should probably click away. But this first video isn't going to be delving too deeply into the story. It is just the first part, and these are kind of like previews. And so far, they haven't been playing a huge role in the story, though I suspect they will at some point in the future. So this video is not going to be as bad as far as spoilers go, and it's probably going to be your best introduction to the series and to the types of formatting you can expect to see in The Familiar. But just to let you know that from this point forward, there's no spoiler warnings. This is the story, this is the book, and I'm going to be showing the pages and discussing aspects of it from here on out in this series. So that's just a warning for you. If you want to see the beginning of the book yourself and not skip anything, then go ahead and click away now. And if not, if you're ready to keep going, then so am I, and let's get started. So the first thing to make note of here is this is the cover, The Familiar, One Rainy Day in May, Volume 1. And there are little pink cats all over the cover, and right here you'll see there is a little white mark, and that is actually a gray cat. So Again, some of these things are things that we don't necessarily know the bigger significance of at the moment, but we are learning, and I think that is one of the biggest draws of this series, just the fact that it is so mysterious. So, going in, this is just the cover page. You'll see it's got a whole bunch of different circles, and this is something that comes up a lot in the series. A lot of the character pages at the start of the chapters will have things like that on them. So, yeah, this is just the blurb and some pictures. You can see some things that look like stones. They kind of look like citrine. Police cars, mother and her child, things like that. Also by Mark Z. Danielewski, House of Leaves, Only Revolutions, and The 50-Year Sword. All of things you should check out if this sort of story is your type of thing. These pages here are all praise for House of Leaves, Only Revolutions, and The 50-Year Sword. I believe the tattoos are things that represent aspects of the past stories that Mark Z. Danielewski has done. A Circle Round a Stone production, that's the name of the production company that is doing these books. They are published by Pantheon, and this is like the name of the production company because this book is meant to be very reminiscent of a TV show. Alright, on this page we have the epigraph of this book by Sheila Nightingale. Kids, man, they never know when they are. And I looked and I couldn't find any sort of definitive answer as to who Sheila Nightingale is or where exactly this quote is from. When I Google this quote, all I really get are articles about the familiar. So these are some places and things that are brought up later in the book, such as the LAPD being an aspect of the book and the urban pet. And then this quote in the corner here, if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. And a list of a whole bunch of people who have said this quote, such as Stephen Colbert, Zenon Pilinshin, Francois-Marie Arouet, Zach Galifianakis, and René Descartes. And finally, we are getting into the actual part that we are going to be discussing here. It's called New This Season, and this is a thing that every single one of the books in the Familiar has so far, and it's plays out as kind of like commercials or previews that you would see before a show starts or before a movie. So the first one is Our Common Horrors, Astral Omega. And this seems to be some sort of message, like a higher life form talking to a lower one. But in truth, we don't actually know who is speaking or to whom. All we really know is that they are dying and plagued by war. And the message they seem to be sending to the lower life form is that they are being plagued by death and war. They always are, and we will always be the same. My favorite quote from this is, what haunts us now and will always hunt you. And I believe from other context clues in this section that line in particular is referring to death, the mother of all conflicts, and the other line is what plagues us now and will always plague you. I believe that is referring to war, and that is something that not even the end of time will end. So Astral Omega is definitely my favorite part of the New This Season section, and I really like that it reads just like in a really ominous narration from the start of a movie, I would watch this movie. So here we have something called Tom's Crossing. This is the start of the second piece of the new this season. And I have to admit, I haven't actually read House of Leaves in its entirety, so I don't exactly know all of the callbacks that are in here, but according to many others who are reading this book alongside me, there are a lot of callbacks to House of Leaves, so it's not exactly easy for me to point them out, aside from the parallels between this Tom and Tom Navidson, and Navidad not being too far off from Navidson. This piece reads a lot like a movie trailer. It's really easy to see, like, these squares being people talking, and it's overlaid with the heart monitor, while the parts that are in this are the actual scene that we're watching in the trailer. Alright, and the final little preview that we have in The Familiar is called Caged Hunt. This is probably the one that left the least bit of an impression on me in this novel, or in this volume, but you can see it's pretty interesting here that it's got the video set up. It actually looks like it's something you're watching on YouTube or on Netflix. I'm not really sure I can say too much on its significance or the things that are, you know, in this part. It is a bit vulgar. There are some vulgar parts in this book, and this is one of the easiest times to see that. But I would really love to hear some other people's thoughts on this section of the book, especially if you've already read it, if you've gone ahead and read up to volume 4. I would love to know if there's some significance to it, but just keep in mind, spoilers, I personally have not read past volume 2, but if we get more of an explanation, if we get more on Caged Hunt, let me know. I would love to look forward to that in my future readings. This page here is kind of like tags, like you would use to search up a video. At least that's what I've read. So we have reign, sign iconic, violence, planetary, and custody. And obviously a lot of these have to do with things that happen later on in this book. The book starts out as a rainy day. Sign iconic actually refers to, I guess, what you would call this genre. It's the word that Mark Z. Danielewski actually uses himself to describe his works, and it's a combination of the words sign and iconic, and it refers to the blending of verbal and visual that makes for this unique reading experience. Another part that is always included in each of the books is something known as an artifact, and this one is the Twin Rivers Ochre artifact. And it seems to take place at the beginning of time, or at least, you know, very, very early on, and we've got very early humans. I wish I could say that I had a lot to say about the significance of this portion as well, but I do not. And I would love to hear more thoughts on it as well, just like with Caged Hunt. However, I would just like to say that reading this portion is stressful just because it is the story of a young boy and a young girl who seem to be abandoned and alone, and they're confused, waiting for the elders, and they just don't know what to do other than wait. And you'll notice down here, this is where the page numbers begin, and I would like to stress that this is not where you're meant to start reading. You'll see this is page 34, and all of these also count as story pages, and a lot of people don't necessarily realize that at first. So even though this is where the page numbers start, the story and everything you're supposed to read starts with new this season. So, skipping through this part, you'll notice something that comes up later in the book is the way this is kind of formatted with the dots acting as something of a parentheses, and this is something that is a big part of the rest of the book. There are other characters that use this, and we'll discuss them a bit more later on when we get to them. But this is something that you'll see more of in the book, and it'll make more sense after we learn who these characters are that uses these types of parentheses. And that is how this book begins. And we flip to the next page. Mark C. Danielewski's The Familiar, Volume 1. One Rainy Day in May. And that is the conclusion of the intro of The Familiar. And next week, we'll be starting in with the first chapter, which focuses on our main character, Xanther Ibrahim. So next week, we'll start talking about the actual meat of the story. We'll actually get into meeting our 9 protagonists. We'll be starting with Xanther, of course, and moving through the rest of them. So I hope you guys found that interesting, and I'm sorry there wasn't as much to discuss in this particular chapter. And again, I'm very sorry for having missed several weeks of uploads. I'm hoping soon to get better with that. But in the meantime, take care, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday with a new episode of The Familiarity.